With this came the anatomical worldview of human beings. We are basically looked at as physical machines that have learned how to manufacture thoughts. Human beings are a wonderful machine, and consciousness is the byproduct. The invisible forces are byproducts. If you think, if you fall in love, if you believe in God or heaven or hell or salvation or damnation, you can understand all this by understanding how molecules behave. And with this worldview also came the whole notion that with the right drug, with the right mechanistic intervention, with the right technology, it was possible to cure any illness as well. This is the paradigm that brought us right into our current age in the early part of this century, which saw the emergence of great breakthroughs actually in scientific medicine, antibiotics and all kinds of other pharmaceuticals. So the understanding was, if I know how bacteria multiply, can interfere with that with the appropriate antibiotic, then I shouldn't have infections anymore. If I understand how cancer cells replicate in the DNA, can interfere with that with the appropriate chemotherapeutic drug, you should get rid of cancer. If you know how hydrochloric acid binds to its receptor sites in stomach walls, interfere with that with the appropriate H2 receptor blocker, you shouldn't have ulcers anymore, etc., etc. All of modern science is based on one fundamental premise. If I know the mechanics of something, the mechanism of something, and if I can learn how to interfere with it, then I should be able to change it. So all of science this is the fundamental premise. Unfortunately, we didn't realize until recently that mechanisms of illness are not the origins of illness. Mechanisms of illness are not the origins of illness. The origins of illness have to do with how life expresses itself through the human body-mind. And these are processes that we will discover, which we'll discuss, which we'll go over in great detail during this week. Processes like eating and breathing and digestion and metabolism and elimination and the world of sensory experience, what we hear and what we touch and what we see and taste and smell, and an inner life that we all have of thought and feeling and emotion and desire and memories and dreams. These are the processes that in fact influence what happens in our life. This is how life expresses itself through the human body mind. Not paying attention to the fact that the origins of illness are not the same as the mechanisms of illness, we went under the premise that if we could just understand the mechanism of illness, we would be able to take care of it. But even though scientific medicine made major breakthroughs, and I want you to all be very sure during this week that we have nothing against scientific medicine. Scientific modern medicine is extremely effective in acute illnesses and can save your life. But it's incomplete. That's the whole thing that we want to understand. It's not holistic in its totality. It's not holistic because in order to be holistic, it has to understand the body, it has to understand the mind, it has to understand the soul, it has to understand the spirit, it has to understand the environment. Scientific medicine in which we were trained, David and I, we became really superb technicians who knew almost everything about the human body and absolutely nothing about the human soul, because there was no fundamental basis for understanding the soul. This mechanistic worldview has ruled medicine till recent decades. And now we are seeing a shift again in the paradigm, which was completely mechanistic, completely part of the industrial age, into a new shift in medicine. And this comes from the worldview that literally saw the breakdown of the superstition of materialism. Because in the early part of the century, what happened is there were major discoveries by scientists like Niels Bohr and many others, Heisenberg and many, many other scientists, great scientists, quantum physicists, who said that if you really begin to look at material things and understand the nature of matter, you'll understand that it's not material. Matter is made up of atoms. The atoms in turn are made up of subatomic particles, and the subatomic particles are not things. They are fluctuations of energy and information. And so we saw the emergence in the early part of this century of what we can call the information age. And we're in it at the moment. The industrial age is gone. And we have now the information age, where everything is based on an understanding of nature as a field of energy and information. So I think everyone in this room is familiar with Einstein's famous equation, E is equal to mc squared. Without going into the mathematics of it, what that equation says, that energy and matter are the same thing. That you can take energy and you can create matter out of it. You can take matter and create energy out of it. That is the early part of the century. But now, during the later part of the century, what scientists are saying is that there's a third part to this equation that we have ignored. And that third part is information. Okay, so energy is equal to matter, but is also equal to information. That in fact, everything that exists has these three components to it. Everything that exists has these three components to it: matter, energy, and information. Anything. So you take a piece of meat, medium rare steak, it's matter, but it's also energy. That's why when you eat it, you use that energy you convert that matter into energy that you can employ in activities, physical activity and mental activity, but it has information in it. There's cholesterol and there's all this other stuff, carbohydrate and protein, and you look at that and there's even finer levels of information in that piece of meat. But that's true of this table. It's matter, it's energy, there are subatomic forces here, and these subatomic forces are not just states of energy, they are hierarchies of states of information. That the entire material world, from mineral to plant to animal, is made up of these three components. These three components are ubiquitous in nature. You know, when I was thinking about this a couple of weeks ago, and the three words that came to mind were omnipresence, omnipotent, and omniscience. As matter is omnipresent everywhere in the universe. Energy is everywhere. That's omnipotence. Energy is everywhere in the universe. And information is everywhere in the universe. That's omniscience. So those are the essential qualities of spirit, which manifests as information, energy, and matter. Omnipresence, omnipotence, and omniscience. We'll go into the different levels of spirit later this evening. So this was the information age that brought us to where we are today. And from the information age, we are on just a stepping off phase. We are going to leave the information age soon into what can only be called the age of consciousness. Because now we are recognizing that the essential raw material of the universe is not just matter, energy, and information, but it is actually intelligence. And I would like to define intelligence for you for our purposes. Intelligence is the same thing as awareness. And I'd like to really spend a few minutes, because this is the basis of our whole course, that the raw material of the universe, raw material is matter plus energy plus information. And they are actually the same thing in different disguises. Because anything that's material is also broken down into its energy component, and anything that has energy in it has states of information in it. An atom, which is the basic unit of matter, is not just a solid entity. In fact, it is not a solid entity. An